Hello and welcome to another edition of Pulp Picks. My name is Patrick.
I'm Fritz.
And we're here to give you this week's reading recommendations on New Comic Book Day, as we do every week.
Mm-hmm.
And let's get right into it, Fritz. We spent a lot of time talking this morning about a number of different books that we liked.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get to your pick.
Yeah, so my pick is Guardians of the Galaxy issue 6, a title that has been on here pretty frequently, I'd say.
Yes.
But this issue is kind of the issue like everyone's been waiting for, where we find out like what happened to cause like Grootfall, the whole like overarching thing that they've been dealing with for this series so far, just like what turned Groot into a giant, all-consuming monster that's been wiping out entire solar systems. And it's, I don't know, the way they go about like kind of like doing it without getting to like spoilers for the last issue, something happened to the Guardians and they're kind of stuck in this weird like limbo space. Like it's not exactly clear like what's happened to them here, but it's kind of them like flashing back to the events, like what parts they kind of like took into like enable it happening. Like
sure, okay.
Like one of them like was like running probabilities, like, oh, this place is a threat, we should check it out. This character decides, yeah, I'll go be the one to do it. Like basically it's like there's this repetition of just like it's my fault. Like they all like blame themselves for like how things got as bad as they did. And it's very cool kind of seeing like the cascading effects into each other and how none of them really kind of realize that like none of it's really their fault. Like what happens is just like completely out of their control. Like and what it is I don't know if this is like a part of like their lore that like maybe I'm not familiar with, that's like more of a deep cut, or if this is a new thing, but it's very cool, and I'm very curious to see like, because they kind of explain. So it's like they explain how Grootfall happens, but not like it's hard to describe. Like it's kind of like a how but not why kind of situation.
Sure.
So like you kind of understand it, but there's still like more to it, especially with like the cliffhanger on this like takes a real weird turn. Like super not sure what's happening with that now, but. No, it's part of what's always made Guardians fun is just like the group dynamics and just kind of like seeing how the team has fallen apart, but like they're still like bonded together by their failures.
Yeah. Is
just really interesting. I especially the Drax sequence, because Drax has a very convoluted, I mean, a lot of them have very convoluted backstories, but like Drax has always been weird, especially if you're only familiar with the movie version, where he's just some weird alien dude, and in the comics he's some guy who died and got resurrected as some weird alien dude, but then he's also, this version isn't technically the original version because there was whole shenanigans with the like Infinity Stones a couple years ago, like so like he's been dealing with a lot of stuff, and like so what happens in here, like how you find out like what happened to the rest of the team kind of like breaks him a little.
Sure.
And again, like you see how they all become just like broken, like the cover shows, like they're all pretty like fractured at this point. And I don't know, it feels, I honestly have no idea where they're going from here after this issue. Like we know like from this list, it's like, oh, Wiccan and Hulkling are going to like try and make a new Guardians of the Galaxy to help stop Grootfall. But how the rest of this goes is just like, okay, but how does that relate to this then?
Right.
Like, yeah. I love how anytime like when there's a mystery you can like answer it while still like creating more questions that like you know there's going to be a good answer to, because the answers you already got are really good. So yeah, from start to finish this has been a good run. I'm super excited to see where they go next with it.
Well, and you know, the Guardians, because of the movie franchise and because of the fact that it was a really well-regarded comic book series in the early 2000s that came out of the whole Annihilation and all of that. And there were a handful of people who were involved in the creation of the team, different writing teams kind of working together on this event, and them spinning out of, actually it was the second event, Annihilation Conquest. And then the movies, and you've got all these contradicting parts of them from all the different volumes of Guardians, and this one's been handling that really well. I think.
Yeah, like this one, and like a lot of the previous ones have been really good, and this one is no exception. Like it just really has a good handle on like them as characters, as like a group dynamic, because that's where a lot of writers I know, like, they can write like a solo title for a character really well, but anytime they have to do like a team book, like they kind of like not necessarily like do a bad job, but like you can see where their strengths lie, and it's not necessarily with that. Like Jackson and Lansing here, I don't know. They've got it down pat.
I really like the Captain America run, and I'm excited to see where they go at the Guardians, and I think that they've got a great career ahead of them should they choose to continue going.
Yeah,
we'll see. Writing teams don't always.
Oh, they got a new Outsiders book at DC coming up.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Also, speaking of Cap this week,
J. Michael Straczynski back in comic books again. Back with one of the major publishers. He's been doing a lot of indie stuff. Yeah,
I think a new issue of his other thing came out this week too.
Yeah. That's right. Very cool. Well, I went with a Boom title this week. I went with Rare Flavors #1 by, some people say Ram V, some people say Ram V.
I'm not actually sure.
I'm not entirely sure
I think it's Ram, but...
Yeah. But the book is great.
Yes.
And not to be surprised by that, because V has done a fantastic job on a number of titles that I've read. This one's really interesting. I wasn't sure where it was going. I went into it cold. I know that there was something pre-comic book day or somewhere a number of months ago. There was a solicit or something that gave you a look into this early on. So it's been on my radar for a while. And I've heard some people talking about how excited they are for this to come out. And I really like the art style. It's got kind of a cool, like, colored pencil kind of vibe.
Yeah.
But in a good way.
Well, it's interesting because, like, if this is the artist I think they are, like, I think I remember seeing some of their early stuff, like, years and years ago at Marvel. They were, like, it was a lesser-known Ultimate title they were doing at the time.
Oh.
But, like, and, like, I like their stuff then, but what I've seen for this stuff now, if it's the same guy, like, there's, like, they've like upped their game exceptionally.
It's gorgeous. It's got kind of this interesting impressionist kind of vibe, but it just fits really well with the story. And there's some interesting play with proportions, like head size versus shoulders and all that kind of stuff. And it just gives it this kind of interesting,
like almost surreal.
Yeah, which works. Because it turns out that that's kind of where the story is going. So the gist of it is that this main character, who's featured on the cover here, wants to do a documentary about traveling around the world or the region that they're in, or I'm not entirely sure yet because they haven't revealed what the things are that they're going to go do. But they want to go basically travel and eat. And have a documentary created by it. And it was inspired by Anthony Bourdain. So the idea to get out and start doing it is caused by the fact that when they learned that Bourdain had passed, they thought, well, I'm wasting my life. And why shouldn't I do something with this life, or this opportunity that I've been given? But there's a whole other understory behind this character, and you're not... I mean, they seem to be kind of laying it all out, but what it all means and everything, and you get it from the first handful of pages, you're kind of picking up on it right away from the get-go. But there's this interesting letter back and forth between this person and the person that they left behind. And they're corresponding as to the reasoning behind it. So you've got that kind of oddly narrating the backstory while the effort to put together this documentary is happening. And in all of that comes this really descriptive portrayal of making food. And in this particular, I'm guessing that that's going to be the vibe. Right, there's going to be this food item that's going to be made in each issue, and so that's going to be intercut with the scenes of what's happening, and then also these kind of flashbacky things explaining how we got here in the first place. So you've got this kind of recipe and the history of the recipe and the making of the item and the person who's now making the item, all happening interspersed with this story. And it just ended up being really interesting. Sometimes more is less. In this case, juggling all of this stuff at the same time made just a fascinating story. And then we've also got two characters that are on the trail of this person. And by the end of the issue, you figure out why, but there's a rabbit hole, and I'm just not sure how far down it goes. It's great.
I didn't get a chance to grab my copy last night. I know if I did, this probably would have been our consensus pick.
It's so
because
good.
I love everything I've ever read by Ram V. So I don't know. I know I'm going to love it when I get to it.
Yeah, I'm feeling like we under-ordered. It's just super cool. But it's not Batman. It's not Spider-Man. It's not going to be one of our top-selling books. But especially for somebody who's looking for something that's a bit of a palate cleanser from superhero stuff. This is a really good one, and I would highly recommend it.
But speaking of superhero stuff, that is our consensus pick.
Fantastic.
Wonder Woman #1. This was the one we were talking a lot before getting on the camera, but this one is kind of like one of the bigger. We're still in like the dawn of DC, like them like launching all their new titles, and this is like one of the big ones that they announced was Tom King, who I feel like if you read comics at this point, everyone knows who he is.
Yep.
Like,
love him or hate him, you know who he is.
Like he has got big off of like Vision, Omega Men, Sheriff of Babylon. Like he had his big run on Batman. Some more recent stuff like. I was about to call Mr. Miracle recent, but that's like...
It's been a minute.
It's been a minute.
Yeah.
But like Strange Adventures or his current Danger Street, like a lot of his stuff, like he's kind of known for like digging into more like these more like offbeat, obscure stuff. And really outside of Batman and kind of his Superhero Woman of Tomorrow series from a couple years ago, this is his first like real big name character he's done in a while. And he's coming out swinging, I'll say that.
Man, this issue nailed it for me. And, it's got a lot of the elements that I think modern superhero comic books try to do over and over and over again. And when it works really, really well. And when it doesn't work, it comes up short. This is cool. There's shadowy figures. There's friction between governments.
I love because there's like several pages that are basically just dedicated to either like news broadcasts or news interviews and stuff. And like it gave me, it's not structured the same way necessarily, but like it very much reminded me of like how Dark Knight Returns did that. Like would use that to give you this view, which is interesting because a lot of times when it comes to like his layout, and it's no exception here, like King's very much become known for like the 9-panel grid that like a lot of people they think of like Watchmen when they think of it. Like, King loves doing that. So like the fact that he's combining like elements of like one of the other like big 80s like comic like redefining series is very interesting to see and kind of incorporate that element too now.
Yeah, and so having read this and Captain America both this week, there's a similar thread between Wonder Woman and Captain America, and we touched on this in our conversation earlier, but it's not about blind faith or blind allegiance. It's about truth and what's right. And that's, you've got these opposing sides that are gearing up for either a Cold War or outright conflict. You're not entirely sure. There's the individuals who get caught in between, and it's all started by this part will be no surprise because they've been doing solicits for Wonder Woman
also I think
for a while now.
I think like at least for like last week's comics, a lot of them had like previews of like the first couple pages.
So there appears to be an incident in
Montana,
I think. At a pool hall where in Amazon attacks and kills a number of people. Yeah. Now we get to see the beginning of it, and then it's kind of you're then viewing it from the outside, so you don't know exactly how the details go down and what have you. But that sparks this whole anti-Amazon movement in the United States, And that's where... So, you know, the Amazons as a country, I guess? I don't know.
I mean, Themyscira is recognized as
or
a
a
country,
government.
Yeah.
Are doing their thing, and the United States is doing their thing, and of course Amanda Waller is referred to but doesn't show up in the book.
Yeah.
So you can imagine how the United States is going about it if they're kind of talking in the circles that she would travel in to deal with this situation.
And one of the things I like, it does like just like very offhandedly mention like, not that anyone really wants to think about this storyline, but like Amazon's attack from like what 15 years ago now or something like that. Like they reference like that this isn't the first time like there's been tension. So like they're building off to like, oh yeah, like things have never been like great between like America and Themyscira, and like this is kind of just like the tipping point that's like pushing it over. And there's some other stuff in here hinting that like there's even like more like bad history between the two that like we're not aware of. Like that whole like ending with like part of one of the appeal like of this too is we're getting a new Wonder Woman villain here that for now is just being referred to as the Sovereign, and I'm very curious to see like where they go with them.
It's an interesting concept.
Yeah.
And so it comes down to Wonder Woman wants to find out the truth, which works out great because she's got a lasso that's going to help her do that. But
the people she's against are very much dead set on selling the lie.
Yes, and how can that have an impact on global politics and then also street level people? Because again, like you're talking about with the newscasts and everything, we're getting the view of the average Joe on the street and what they think about this. And it's doing such a good job of looking at this thing from all these different points of view. But there's somebody behind the scenes pulling strings, so it's going to be really good.
Yeah.
I thought it was a great setup, and we've gone all this time without talking about the art.
I was just about to say.
Yeah, this is beautiful.
Yeah, like it was like maybe, I mean, honestly, even more for me than like hearing that King was going to be writing it, because like I generally like most of the stuff that King's writing, even like the stuff where like it doesn't click with me. I get what he's going for, but I knew that this was going to be one of the best looking books because we got Daniel Sanfrey on art, and that boy does not miss. Like he's like risen fast because like he's done like some stuff here and there for DC over the last couple of years. He was on Action Comics for a bit, and then they just immediately upped him to doing like Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths, which is like a big get for like when you're kind of like fresher to the industry and you're just like, hey, you get to be the main artist on our big event title.
Yeah.
And now he gets to do a Wonder Woman relaunch. So like DC is obviously very confident in his skills, and they very much should be because he's doing great work here.
Yeah, I just love this style where it's kind of just a modern take on like the 70s, where you've got that very much that pseudo realistic, but it's all comic book too.
Yeah, like it's realistic without losing any of like the dynamicism you need to like convey like, oh, these are people who can like throw cars or like fly, but he also gets like these really great human touches. Like there's so many good expressions. Like one of the characters in here, I don't think this is really a spoiler, but like Sarge Steele is like one of the kind of main antagonists, and he gets some great expressions, and it's usually when it's him being like an awful person.
Yeah.
But like there's just a couple times where he's just got like this smile where it's just like he's having a ball, and it's just like in the context just like, you are just the worst.
Yeah. Well, and I love it when you can read a comic and know who the character is without having to read their
there's like pages where like if it was just like silent, you'd be able to get a complete read on like, oh, who this person is.
It's been great. And the use of distance for the camera, there are a number of shots that are way pulled back where we're having a conversation, and it's as they're walking down the sidewalk, and it's kind of moving from moment to moment, and then there's also some really awesome tight action shots that it looks great.
Yeah, like I knew I was going to like it. I was not expecting to like it as much as I did, and I'm super excited to see where they go forward with it.
Yeah, this is a must get. Put it on your list. Well, we will be back next week with more picks. This is a great week, and it's a good-sized week again.
Lots of new number ones.
Yeah, we've got 4 shelves that are holding comic books for you. Lots of new number ones. There's a whole bunch of event stuff that's amping up. We've got a number of books that I'm excited about that have just been getting started. Alpha Flight number 2 is coming out. Like we said, Captain America number 1 was very, very close to being on this list as well. So all kinds of good stuff. Be sure to like, subscribe, leave your comments on what you really enjoyed. Stop into the store, check it all out. And yeah, we'll be back again with another video yet again next week because there will be more books.
Oh yeah.
Which is maybe the best thing that we could possibly get. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
That seems to be kind of the implication. Is like, oh, I didn't even mention the finger guns.
Yeah, the finger guns were great.
Yeah, but yeah,
Pew, pew.
I don't know, the implication is that.